Hello guys, welcome back to another interview, and today we're joined by 3-0 pro MMA fighter Adam Cullen. Thank you for joining me, and how's things?
All good, mate. Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. I just want to start talking mainly about, just quickly, about the earlier days in your amateur days. Just to touch on things. Obviously, I read a few of your Instagram posts, and you mentioned you had a few, you struggled with injuries and times with your amateur career, especially early on. How do you think that's helped you improve, and like, how do you think that's made your mindset clearer? Going kind of as you've transitioned into a pro.
I think it's just one of them, isn't it? Like going through your career when you're getting injuries and stuff like that. It's probably like it feels like they're gonna last forever. Like I had a couple of injuries there that like I didn't really recover from for like 18 months and 2 years. So it's good experience to be fair, because I think if you're having a fight career and you think you're never gonna get injured or you're never gonna get hurt, you're deluded. Do you know what I mean? So to get that out the way, well, say out the way, but to get them in early. I think it's just like solidified my mindset and really like reminded myself like why I want to do it, and to be able to push through them injuries over 18 months and then come out to the side. Like I think it just made me like a stronger fighter overall.
Yeah, and with the injuries, were a lot due to maybe training harder as you turn into an amateur, and I can imagine as a fighter when you train, I imagine you train every day quite a lot, especially. Were they more injuries you picked up from training, or was it things from fights that you might have tweaked and things like that?
No, they were injuries in fights. Like I got armbarred twice in a fight. First time I got armbarred, I completely destroyed all the ligaments on my elbow. But the reason he turned out so bad was because I just didn't let them heal. I just carried on training, carried on fighting, and then they just never ever got any better. And it's one of them where it's like, looking back, it was just daft. Like it was completely my own fault, and like it absolutely destroyed my arm. And like ended up fighting the same lad, like a year and a half later, and getting armbarred again on the same arm. But like this time, the minute he grabbed it, it just exploded, and it was like, all right, I think it's time to do a bit of rehab. Do you know what I mean? Get the proper recovery in. But it was a lesson learned. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you can try and tough do things and be like, oh, I'm different. I don't need to take time off. Like I'm mentally bomb-proof and I'm just gonna fly through and all. And it's just not true. You've got to just take the time sometimes, and I learned that lesson the hard way.
So I believe, obviously, you fought the same guy. I believe you picked up another win as well, and then obviously you fought him again later on. So did you just, when you got first injured, did you fight again do a camp, fight again with the same kind of injury, not fully healed? Then when you got back in there, it happened again. So you were basically fighting a few fights with an injury still, and still training through it.
Yeah, basically it was. Thinking back now, it's just like so stupid. But yeah, I think I fought him, say, October, and like my arm was destroyed. I remember going home and I couldn't use my hand at all. It was like absolutely destroyed. Like my fingers were going numb and everything. And then like I still sort of trained up until Christmas, like training around it. And then like Feb come round and Paul Vin was like, "Do you want to fight again?" And I'm like, "Yeah, my elbow's fine. Like it's fine. I'll fight. Yeah." I just completely kidded myself, blagged it. And then I did another camp after that, trying to fight in June, but I didn't get to fight again. Then fought in September, like my elbow was still just destroyed, but again, just blagging it. And then ended up, I was in my head, I was like, all right, after this fight, I'm gonna do the rehab. But then I ended up taking a fight again with the same lad that destroyed my arm on 2 weeks' notice. And when it got offered to me again, I just went, yeah, no, I'm fine. I've got no injuries. Sweet, I'll fight him. And then famous last words, and it really just completely wrote me off.
So did you take that fight with him? Say if it wasn't him, or was there any kind of, did you jump back in there because you thought, oh right, I want to get this win back? So you just thought, right, all right, the injury, put it to the back of my head. I'll jump in now. I'm ready. And then obviously.
Yeah, it was one of them. It was for the Cage Warriors amateur title at welterweight, and but I'll be honest, that like I did that because it was him. Like if it was someone else, I probably wouldn't have done it, but because it was that lad, and I thought, oh, I can beat him. I know I can beat him, and then I jumped back in, and same thing happened again. But it is what it is. You know what I mean? You just learn from it, don't you? But that was definitely my ego. took over, and I thought, I'll beat him. And if it wasn't, like I say, if it wasn't him, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I was so desperate to get that one back that I just completely just ruined it for myself, didn't I?
Yeah, now I can imagine things like that happen, especially when it's somebody that probably caused you a lot of pain with that injury. It's kind of like an ego thing. Now, obviously, I just want to also touch on some of your training part. I know you train at Next Gen in Liverpool, obviously with the likes of Molly and Paddy and things like that. Do you, with your mindset and maybe now maturing a bit further on from when you originally started fighting, obviously I know you pick things up from fighters in the gym, but like mentality wise, do you pick up things from them guys, knowing like they're experiencing things now, which you're going to probably want to experience that later down the line? Do you pick up them kind of things and ways to handle things from the guys that are a bit more experienced than you?
Yeah, definitely. You know, like I think when you first start fighting, you think like I did anyway. I thought I'm never gonna lose. Like I'm too good. I train too hard. Things normally go my way. I'm dead fit. I put everything in, and I think like you do. I kicked myself and thought I'm never gonna lose. And then when I lost them a few fights at amateur, like I thought the world was over, and I was like, oh, I'm never gonna come back. I'm never gonna get to the UFC. I'm never gonna make a career out of this. And I think like at the time it was sort of good for me because like that was when Paddy had his couple of losses on the bounce, and like probably the lowest part of his career. And then like I was like, oh, hang on, like he's fighting for Cage Warriors world titles and he's got losses. Like, do you know what I mean? It's sort of like picking from them. When you look at yourself, you're like, fucking hell, I've lost a couple of amateur fights early there. Like it's nothing. And seeing how we bounced back and now like he's probably one of the biggest stars in the sport, isn't he? And he's got losses on his record. And the same for Molly. Like she made like this absolute crazy run in Cage Warriors, didn't she? She won the belt, and it was all like the stars all aligned for her, didn't she? And it was like, oh, she's fighting on UFC Liverpool now against a girl that she should beat, and it didn't happen for her. And I think you've got to accept, haven't you, that like sometimes things don't go to plan in MMA. Do you know what I mean? You can have perfect camps, injury free, the perfect opponent, you're in great shape, but like everything could go right, and then the fight can go wrong. Do you know what I mean? It's only 15 minutes, anything can happen, can't it? You're both fighting to kill each other at the end of the day, aren't you? And I think looking back from that, seeing how they bounced back, you can't get too down about it. Do you know what I mean? That definitely helped me watching them. It sounds harsh, like watching them go through like some of the low points of their career really, really helped me.
Yeah, and touching, obviously, you mentioned like when your mindset and how you felt about things. Obviously, when you come off them 2 losses, and obviously you had injuries and things like that. Did you ever think to yourself, this isn't for me? Like, I thought too much of myself, and now I'm here, and this has happened. I'm never going to make it. Did them kind of doubts creep into your mind? That I can imagine they do early on.
Of course, because at the same time, I had people that are rooting against you. Like people don't want you to do well, and they're already going, "Oh, what are you doing that for?" Like, do you know what I mean? Why don't you just get like, do something normal, like fighting is stupid, that and all that, and that was all going on. And when you're winning, it's all right, isn't it? Because you can go, "Oh yeah, do you know what I mean? Whatever, I'm doing this." So, and then eventually it was like, hang on, maybe I'm making the wrong choice here. Like, why am I fighting? Going in there and I'm just like getting hurt and things aren't going to plan and I'm getting embarrassed. That was the worst thing for me, to be honest, was getting people to come to your fight, selling tickets and then losing in front of them. That's the worst thing about all of it. And it was like embarrassed. And what, of course, like you're a divvy if you say the doubts don't start creeping in. Like for a split second, I did think maybe it's not for me. But then you have to like regroup, don't you? And you go back to training, get back on with it, speak to coaches, and realize that like it's part of the game, isn't it? Like no one goes 50-0 and never gets touched, do they, even a train? It just doesn't happen. It's not sport for that.
Now, and with that knowing that now, like, do you obviously you mentioned his name earlier, obviously Tom Clark. Now, obviously, was that a fight that you'd want to run back? I know obviously he hasn't fought for a while. He's a pro now. You're a pro. Have you seen past that? Are you just kind of forgetting about that, or is that a fight that you'd want to take on, knowing that kind of like stress that he did cause you in your career?
I'm definitely past that. I've seen the size of him now. I walked past him at FCB like a few months ago, and he is massive. He's an absolute machine. But no, he's like I think he's like fighting a middleweight and welterweight now. But yeah, I'm past that. I was fighting the wrong weight class anyway. I should never have been a welterweight. I was coming back into the cage at like 79 kg. Do you know what I mean? When I was fighting, I come back in heavier than that at lightweight now. I had no business being in there, but it was just one of them. You're young, aren't you? You just fight anyone. But nah, fair play to him. He got the better of me, didn't he? So at the end of the day, you just move on, don't you? Like, it was so long ago that now. I think it was like 2.5, 3 years ago. But yeah, no, he's way too big for me.
I think you fought him, I believe, it was 2018, so that was a long time ago, and of course.
Yeah, he completely different now.
Yeah, I saw he was big. I didn't know it was that much of a difference, but yeah, I saw that he was getting big. Now, obviously, just touching on like the time off you had, obviously we're talking about. Now going forward, I suppose you're completely fit. Would that be right to say?
Say that again, sorry.
I'll just say, at the moment, would you say, are you completely fit at the moment?
Yeah, I'm
around there. So obviously going into this year, do you have any like goals set out and dates and things where you'd want to achieve things and get fights by?
I just want to have as many fights as I can this year on Cage Warriors. Keep going, do you know what I mean? Keep smashing people. Like I want like a harder fight each time. Like, I fought a few guys like at the minute, and I've smoked them, haven't I? Really, like my first 3 opponents. So I just want bigger tests every time, and I want to finish this year and like be in with a shout for like a fight for a title next year. Do you know what I mean? Like that's my goal for the year. Really establish myself in that division. So people are saying that like I'm next in line and I'm going to take the biggest fights. You know what I mean? That's all I want. Just tough fights all year, as many as I can get in.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you finding it easy to find fights? Like as a pro, I've spoken to pros in the past where they said since turning pro, they've struggled to get fights, you know, especially you being undefeated in the way you have, which we'll get onto. Do you find that, is it been difficult to get fights for you? Or do you think maybe some of the pros I've spoke to have had a really good, like completely undefeated amateur and then struggled to get fights, lost 1 and 2 as a pro, but said it was hard just turning pro because of that amateur record? Or do you think you got fights easier because of maybe you lost 1 or 2 now and then?
Do you know what? Like I have really struggled, to be honest. My pro debut was like a last minute pullout. Like at the time it was obviously COVID and there was no shows going on. I was getting matched on different like regional shows. It was like they definitely weren't going to happen. So I turned pro off the back of going to Paul Rimmer saying if anyone pulls out in Cage Warriors at lightweight, doesn't matter who it is, I'll fight them. And then over the few weeks of that training camp, different people were pulling out, and I was getting offered them saying yeah, and Cage Warriors was going, oh no, like we don't want to match him with the debut because like do you know what I mean? Like, obviously, if you're like an experienced lad, you wouldn't want to fight a debut, would you? Because it's not like the step in the right direction. But I think they appreciated that from me. That I was saying yeah to everyone. So then I was told that like when fights broke down and there was space on the cards, I was told like right, we're going to get you a fight. Do you know what I mean? For being there and being ready and saying yeah to everyone. So then after my first fight, it was all like it was sound. Thought that Oscar Owensworth, he stepped up as well on like late notice and fought, didn't we? But after I beat him, I got matched straight away against Josh Plant. So it was pretty like instant. First time I've ever had like a 12, like 13 week camp, and from start to finish, I was matched with someone. But realistically, I think I got that match and that went through because he'd had quite a lot of fights, hadn't he? So for him, I assume fighting someone who's 1-0 wasn't anything new. Like he wasn't really worried about it. Since I beat Josh Plant, it's been an absolute nightmare. I was meant to fight in Cage Warriors in October, and I think I had 3 different opponents in the training camp that all pulled out. I signed 3 different contracts with 3 different opponents, and then on the week of the fight, I got offered another 3 opponents, like out on a whim, like on a chance, and I said yeah to all 3 of them, and all 3 of them said no to me. So it was just like a full training camp, and everyone turned me down, and it was just, to be honest, it was an absolute nightmare. And then going into December, again, I think before I had my final opponent, then Mikhail Bayan, I think I had another 2 opponents before that, at least another one that I signed the contract for, was ready to fight, and they just pulled out. And it was, to be honest, it's getting to the point now where it's like, I need big fights, I need big step-ups, because no one else will fight me. And people can say, like, oh, you're not ready to fight him, and he's got too many fights here, but who else am I going to fight? Like, I can't just not fight anyone, can I? There's no point me going fighting 1-0, 2-0 guys when I've been smoking them and smashing them all. My last opponent was 5-1, and I completely destroyed them. Like, I need big step-ups now, and they're going to have to give them to me, because it's the only way no one else will fight me.
So I spoke to other fighters which are experiencing the same problem as you are. People not wanting the fight, seeing maybe the way that you've finished some of the other guys that are similar to them in such quick succession. I don't know if this is your style, but is it your style to call names? Is that what you want to do, or is that kind of what you're going to have to do if people don't start like just accepting fights? You're going to have to start calling bigger names and things like that.
I think I'm going to have to eventually. Do you know what I mean? The problem is there's too many poses. In fighting, there's just so many people who like want to be fighters and pretend they're fighters and probably go around telling all the mates that they're fighters and all the girls. But then when it comes down to it, they don't want to fight. But originally, I haven't called anyone out really yet, because I respect that I'm like, I was 1-0 and 2-0, and maybe even now 3-0. It's like, okay, I'm still not like a top guy, but like, eventually I'm going to have to just say, this is who I want, and I want them now. Do you know what I mean? I want him on X date. Why can't I fight him? There's no reason. Do you know what I mean? Why I shouldn't be doing that? And I think that's what it's going to come to. And I think a lot of guys in the sport, and especially on regional UK MMA, like the guys are saying, are going to have to do that, because people just don't want to fight. People claim you want to fight. Like I got a match with a 40 fight. He had 40 pro MMA fights. I signed the contract for him, and 4 days later we pulled out. Like, what's all that about? 40 pro MMA fights, and not like 1-39. He's like, I think he was 22 and 26 something record was, so more, nearly 50 MMA fights. It was 22 wins and 26 losses, something was, loads of fights, and he still didn't want to. Like, what is going on? How do you have fights like that? How do you have that many fights if you don't want to fight people? Fight someone who's 2-0, it's embarrassing, really. So yeah, I'm gonna have to start calling people out and asking for names and going to E&D and saying, this is who I want for this date. Otherwise, it won't happen.
Yeah, and surprising that, because you would think somebody of a negative record but still with loads of fights, you'd think people like yourself is the people he would want to fight. People that haven't got loads of experience, where he think maybe his experience would overpower your game. So
of course,
surprising.
Of course.
That is what you'd think from obviously a fighter's perspective of yourself. I can imagine that is what you would think. Obviously, you mentioned just quickly before the quality and how you basically smoke guys. Do you think, like, when obviously I've watched your fights, and your fighting style is, you always seem to be on the front foot, and you get them to the floor and you just strangle them, and it's over within a couple of minutes. Like, I think the longest you were in there was like 3 minutes. I don't even think it was that, to be fair. Do you realize, like, when you're in there, do sometimes you overestimate your opponent's quality, and then when you're in there and you realize how overpowering you are, like, people just seem to be completely out of control, and you're always striking, and people give up their back to you, which they clearly mustn't like what you're hitting with them, because they just give up your back and you choke them. Do you notice that quality when you're in there, or do you kind of already know going in there that, like, I'm just going to smoke this guy?
I don't know. I think you always got to, like, overestimate your opponents, haven't you? You've got to expect that this is going to be the hardest hardest fight I've ever had in my life, and you've got to be willing to die, haven't you? Like, this is a war, and I need to kill him before he kills me. But I used to get locked up when I was an amateur and watching people's fights, and I'd watch loads and loads of fights and be like, oh, he does this and he worries about it. Do you know what I mean? And he did this to this guy, and that guy looks good and all. But I had a conversation a couple of years ago with my strength and conditioning coach, and we were talking about this. And the thing he said that stuck with me was, well, none of that matters, because he's never fought you. And that proper, like, rung a bell in my head. I was like, oh yeah, like, of course. So now I think going into all my fights, like, I watch opponents, and So they beat good guys. Like the last lad, I thought he beat some Russian who was like 8-2 on like a show in Latvia, and it was like, oh, like he looks good. But then at the end of the day, that was my mentality going into it. He's never fought me, so it doesn't matter. Like, all that's irrelevant. I'm going in there and I'm going to kill him as fast as I can and just go 100 miles an hour until I get the finish. And that's what I did. And a lot of the times they can't hang with me. But yeah, I always like respect my opponents in my head. Like, I'm not going in there expecting that's going to be an easy fight. But if it is, isn't it? You know, at the end of the day, what can you do?
And just on my last two questions, your previous opponent was kind of considered, and still is considered. Obviously, he's only suffered this. I think you were his second defeat, but he was an up and comer as well. And do you kind of get a bit frustrated with that when you're not getting these fights, when you think like the quality in there is so different? Like, he was an up and comer. He was, like you said, he fought some good guys, 8-2. You got in there and you choked him out. So is it frustrating that you kind of got to wait so long to get another fight when you're on such a good run?
Yeah, definitely, especially because I don't, I'm ready for 4 fights a year, and I should have had 3 last year. Fighting in October, but it is frustrating when it's like, that's not my fault. Like, I'm there, I turned up, I was ready to fight. I went to the hotel, I was there, I was stood at the weigh-ins, like, until the 11th hour, waiting for a fight. But it is frustrating because you think other up and comers would want to fight other up and comers and make a name for themselves. Do you know what I mean? But people just don't seem to want to fight, and I don't know what to say. I don't know what goes through the head, because I'm ready to fight, and you just think if you're a fighter, you should be ready to fight, shouldn't you? Especially if you're getting offered opportunities on big shows like Cage Warriors. Like, you've only got to look at the amount of people that have been signed to the UFC, and if that's where you want to go, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? It's a place you need to be. So you should be coming on there and taking a risk and fighting fights that maybe you think, oh, well, maybe that'll be a bit tough. But if you want to go to the UFC, you have to take the risk, don't you? People don't seem to want to do it. They want to pose on Instagram and have nice records and, grabs, but it's not what I'm about.
Yeah, absolutely. Plenty of fighters have said like the same thing, up and comers, and your fighting mentality that you have. A lot of fighters clearly pose to act that they have it, but clearly when it comes down to actually getting in there, they don't. So this next question is just my last question. Obviously, it's kind of out of your control from what I've spoken to you, but do you know when you want to get back? Obviously, I know you want to get back in there as soon as possible. Has there been any talks about when you could be getting back in there?
Yeah, I'm aiming on like a Cage Warriors show. They're meant to be having like 18 shows this year, so March or April time, whenever I get the call, like I've got a few people that like I think would be a good fight for me. Like, whether they want to give me them yet, that's up to them. But March, April time, I'm ready. I'm ready. Do you know what I mean? Whenever, but that's when I want to kick the year off and get the ball rolling and get as many fights in as I can this year.
Perfect. Well, fingers crossed. Honestly, if guys that take the fight and the fight's there, hopefully we'll see you in March. But thank you very much for your time, and obviously thanks for joining me today, Adam. I can't wait to see you fight again, and hopefully when a fight's scheduled and things like that, and if you have the time, we'll hopefully have you back on soon.
All right, mate. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Adam, thank you very much. Cheers, mate.